So if you happen to have an old oven, like a conventional oven, like an electric oven, have you ever considered hollowing that out and using it to burn wood?
Welcome back to Geek Channel 8, GC8, the podcast where we spend a lot of time talking about old movies that probably everyone's forgotten. But today on the show, a journey to the beginning of time from 1966, which isn't actually from 1966, nor was it originally called The Journey to the Beginning of Time, but we'll get into that.
We'll check into that. So what have you been doing?
Well, one of, I think, the problems I have when it comes to streaming entertainment is there is tons of access out there if you're into sports or if you're into movies or if you're into TV shows, uh or reality TV or whatever. There's not a lot of good streaming live concerts.
Oh wow.
It's really hard to find. Join any of these streaming services, they may have a few. There's a lot of live comedy, stand-up comedy and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but not a lot of like concerts. There's a lot of sort of quasi-legal stuff where it's like people shoot concerts on their phones that from the audience, to varying degrees of quality. Some of it actually is pretty good. And I think it's gotten to the point where like all these bands and artists and record labels and stuff like that, it's impossible for them to fight the tidal wave and enforce anything against these, because like
Right.
one concert might have, you know, hundreds of people that are like filming on their phones and uploading it. So the fact that there's no like official released product out there or very little of it
Mm.
means that like people like myself will turn to these YouTube channels where it's just like someone uploaded this band, and I'm like, oh, I'd like to see that, and I'll watch it, and then that'll like the algorithm will suggest other stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, if I can find a really good concert of a band that I want to see on a streaming platform, Prime or HBO Max now, or Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus, whatever it is, I will watch it. There is supposedly one streaming service that's straight up music, but I looked at their catalog at one point in time and it was all too mainstream for me.
I was looking for something. I wanted to send a link to the track "Trains" by Lemon Demon, who I talked about before. He's a guy that my kid turned me on to, and so I was like, oh man, I'm like Teddy, how can I do this? Where's his channel? I can't find it. He's like, yeah, he's weird. He doesn't even bother maintaining his own music on YouTube. He has a channel, but he doesn't keep up with it. And in fact, most of his stuff's not on there. Other people, his fans, will put up his music. And he said, so this you might as well just use this because it's the person who's doing the work. Because I wanted to give them the clicks or the whatever, the credit, right? Because a lot of times people will put up music and it's not the artist. I want to give credit to the artist. That's what I'll do. There were always these programs on PBS and stuff. It'd be like live from Wood Trap or Mountain Stage and different things like that. Basically, there are a lot of music programs where will be live music, right? But that was on broadcast or even cable. I thought by now it would be you own a venue, you broadcast some of the concert, you record it, and you put it out there to say this is what you missed last time. These guys were great. You should go and follow up on the music and here's their next tour. You don't want to have it simulcast because maybe that you don't want to give away everything, but you would want to say here's what you missed. Check it out. It's awesome. You could have been here for this. I'm surprised that's not just standard by now.
It's not, because music industry and music licensing is a mess and it always has been.
Yeah.
you remember the whole Napster debacle. It's like, well, if you had just let people have access to the music they wanted, there wouldn't be this underground market for it.
Right, right.
And in a lot of cases, that market is like a free market.
Yeah, especially now.
But there are plenty of people to be willing to pay for it. I'll pay for a service like Night Flight is pretty cool because they have a bunch of good concerts on there. I think that's where I saw Arga Music War not too long ago.
Oh, wow.
But they're very focused on like sort of the punk new wave thing. That's their thing.
Yeah.
If you want to listen to anything outside of that, Rammstein or something like that, you have to go find that. Now that one exists on Prime, I think, because they're a huge band and they like made the effort to hire people to record their concerts,
Yeah.
So they have, live at Madison Square Garden or something like that. But you name another band, like a metal band or an obscure rock band or whatever it is, it may not even exist. Short of bootlegs.
It's all about the curation. You were my musical curator. Because of you, I knew about things I would have never known about. You can do it for your friends. You can share stuff like that. You can get it from your kids or whatever. You find a trusted source, the equivalent of your local record shop. Oh man, I would be all in. That's the kind of stuff where I'm like, I'll go back to that guy over and over again. I love these guys. So when you find a true believer who wants to share stuff with you, you get down with it.
Yeah. So because the big acts don't have their content out there through official channels that's easily accessible, one of the things I'm into is there are tons of musicians that start their own YouTube channel. Some of the ones that pop to mind immediately is the Snake Charmer. She was like
Oh yeah,
she's like an Indian bagpipe person, right? And she started doing her own stuff. And then like, of course, you know, the greater YouTube bagpipe community, there's like, so she made contact with other bagpipers in other countries, and then they started playing together, that kind of thing. Another one is this guy Davidus, I think is how you say his name. I don't know. He's like a one-person band. He's one of those guys that travels around with the keyboard and then he
nice.
programs the drums, then he programs and like the last one I saw by him, which came out, it just dropped like a couple of weeks ago, was him like in a Waffle House playing Johnny Cash, and like, all the locals are in the Waffle House, like just having their, and he's like sets up and starts playing this, and like pretty soon people start taking notice, so it's stuff like this. It's buskers. There was like an amazing one I saw the other day. She was playing some kind of instrument that I guess she got a pre-release or something. It doesn't even exist yet, wow. And it was kind of like a guitar kind of thing, but it's like some sort of synthesizer guitar thing. And she was doing Radiohead's Creep. So I got to give a plug to this woman. Her name is Leire, Leire or something like that.
Yeah.
Her video just dropped like a couple weeks ago. It's on YouTube. It's titled Never Seen Anything Like It. Is that a guitar and her voice mind-blowing? And it is. And she claims that it's a lava genie. And I don't know, I guess she probably works for the company or is like has some connections because she drops links to it. She's like, it's a lava genie. It's not on the market yet, available to pre-order here. But anyway, she's got this instrument and she's playing in like some public space. It's really awesome. There's like a gazillion covers of Radiohead's Creep online, but this one is really worth seeking out. All right. Enough about that. Let's jump into talking about this movie, which is a 1955 film.
Yeah.
But it was released in the US in 1966. So do you have a background to 1966 for us?
See, I went with 55.
Which, okay. Better yet.
So, okay. So it was Czech originally, right?
Yes. If you remember from our last episode, the one place that had surviving copies of the Lost World silent film.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Coincidence? I ask you. Anyway.
Okay, just context. Here in the States, Brown versus the Board of Education, that was the desegregation thing that was going on. That's the lawsuit. That was the one. That happened. We were also doing the Bikini Atoll out test. So we were, yeah. Okay, so atomic energy was big. As a matter of fact, not only was the Nautilus, the American nuclear submarine, launched and tested this year, but I believe it was in the year before that, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the movie was out. So I was looking into some of the kids' movies that are out during this time because this is, just context. This is a kids' movie.
Right.
So, Eisenhower was in office. Lady and the Tramp came out, which when I think about it, I'm like, huh, man, that thing's been around for a long time. But so that's kind of innocent. On the contrast, Blackboard Jungle came out that year. All right. And then just probably more fitting to the theme of what was happening in our movie that we're watching today, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. That was
Yes.
so. I mean, and this was a time when the very first microwave, which was cost something like the equivalent of like almost 25 grand. You could get one, and they had just broken the 4-minute mile. These are the kind of things that were going on.
It blows my mind that the microwave is that old because it seemed like a new thing when we were kids.
Oh yeah, nobody had. I didn't have one, and
I think we got one at some point when I was a kid, and we're like, "What is that?" And they're like, "It's a microwave oven," you know? And of course, originally they came with there were cookbooks you would get, they're like microwave cooking, and there's like it's really elaborate, and you spend like it's still super quick compared to like a actual oven. So instead of putting things in for an hour and stuff like that, you can make stuff in 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but nobody ever did that. You put stuff in, you put it on high for like 2 minutes. And to this day, I think that that's how everybody uses a microwave. Like
oh,
nobody's like, "Oh, I'm going to create souffle in the microwave and it's going to be in there for 25 minutes on medium power." Nobody does that, but you could.
oh yeah, oh no. And the thing is that whenever a new device comes out, that's where it starts out. Like I have a Chambers oven. This is a really old oven. This is from when gas was new. It's even built insulated with a steel plate in the bottom to help you conserve gas, right? But it's a gas oven. They have an entire cookbook on how to cook with the heat that was reserved. And it's actually really cool, but I never use it that way. I just crank that puppy up because, man, it makes good pizzas. But we were not in Vietnam at this time, but Vietnam War had started.
Yeah.
And just a couple years before that, Korean War had ended. This is the context. It was a different time. This was Gunsmoke era in terms of what was on the TV, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the popular idea of Vietnam is like a war that lasted from like 1965 to 1975 or something like that. Like, and that was considered an eternally long war for its time.
Right.
Since then, we have way outdone that with the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and all that. But I will say that that's the popular conception. And I'm only dropping this because we're kind of a history podcast in a way sometimes too. The US first started sending military advisors and stuff like that to Vietnam around like 1950.
But yeah, we were helping the French. Geez.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, back to more lighthearted things.
Yeah. A little bit about this film. I got to apologize once again. Just like last time, I didn't do my pre-research in time. So the version that you watched, the version that I watched was the 1966 US re-release.
Yeah.
It was not the original version. And I'll talk about the differences in a second. This was originally a 1955 Czechoslovak science fiction adventure film directed by Karel Zeman. I think is how you say his name. It's called Cesta do Praveku. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
I don't speak Czech, but it was dubbed into English and partly refilmed in the US. Originally, though, the plot was about 4 teenagers who want to find a living trilobite.
Wow.
During a break from school, they get on a rowboat on the river of time that flows backwards through a mysterious cave and make their way upstream. They're traveling back in time. And on the journey, they face various perils and learn about life in various previous ages. Zeman was heavily influenced by the artwork of a Czech painter named Zdeněk Burian. I don't know if I'm saying it right, who painted a lot of paintings of dinosaurs. Some of the stop motion animation in this, like the dinosaurs start exactly in the pose from the painting.
Oh, okay, cool.
In 1966, it was released in the US by William Clayton, who had a company that basically took Russian cartoons and movies and redubbed them for kids programming.
Hmm.
I think it's like Saturday morning type stuff. A lot of times they would take a full length film like this and they would turn it into a serialized thing that would air as part of another program or leading into or after another program. And that's what they did with this. They shot a new version of the opening and closing scenes that had boys in New York visiting the American Museum of Natural History and then falling asleep and made it sort of a dream sequence. It was copied onto poor quality film stock and edited into short segments, about 6 minutes each, and presented as syndication for children's TV programs. The US version was released on VHS finally by Good Times Entertainment in 1994. That was probably to cash in on the Jurassic Park craze. Because of the new sequences, none of the actors' faces could be shown until the original footage part begins. So you
Yeah.
only see them from behind and stuff like that.
Uh,
All right.
yeah, the very first part of the movie, this copy, there was no sound on it. I'm like, what is going on here? And that explains it. It's probably from an entirely, it wasn't until basically they hit uh, the river, that where things start coming out right.
And now, before the next show starts, let's enjoy an intermission. You'll find our snack bar chock full of good things to eat and drink. Tasty, tempting hot dogs, thirst-quenching soft drinks, fresh, crunchy popcorn, a complete assortment of delicious candy, and a full line of cigarettes.
I went with a snack from 1966 rather than 55 because that's the version of this that we watched. According to internet searches, the most popular snack of 1966 was Doritos,
Wow.
which surprised me because I thought Doritos came out in our lifetime, but it did not. It
Yeah.
predates us. I think everybody knows what Doritos are, but just in case, they're tortilla chips that were produced by an American company called Frito-Lay, still are. It's a subsidiary of PepsiCo today, but the original concept for Doritos came from a restaurant that Frito-Lay managed at Disneyland.
Ah.
In 1966, they became the first commercially available widespread tortilla chip in the United States. And it was originally just the toasted corn, but people outside of the Southwest thought it was too bland and not, it didn't hit like they expected if it's Mexican, it's going to be spicy. So they had to create taco flavor in 1967. And then in 1972, nacho cheese flavor, which is the one you can find everywhere to this day. It's their most popular flavor. It's now sold worldwide, and there are tons of different flavors, and they vary based on what region you're in. The name comes from Dorito, which is a contraction of Spanish doradito, little fried and golden thing, supposedly. It's a diminutive of Dorado, which is fried golden thing. So, like El Dorado, like Dorado, that's the root. The original product was made at the Casa de Fritos at Disneyland, which is still there, but it's now called Rancho del Zocalo in Anaheim, California during the early 60s. And they used supposedly surplus tortillas, and they took inspiration from a Mexican snack known as totopo. They cut them into smaller pieces, fried them, and added some basic seasoning. And then the vice president of marketing at the time at Frito-Lay, Arch West, noticed that they were popular and he made a deal with Alex Foods in 1964, who provided a lot of the items to Casa de Fritos at Disneyland. And they produced the chips for a short time regionally in Southern California, but they were overwhelmed by the volume.
Oh, wow.
So Frito-Lay moved the production to in-house to its Oklahoma plant. And they were released on a nationwide scale in 1966. By the 1990s, Doritos would account for like 1/3 of Frito-Lay's sales. They were sued in 1993 by Charles Grady, who claimed that his throat was damaged by eating Doritos. According to his lawsuit, the shape and rigidity of the chips made them inherently dangerous. And he attempted to admit to evidence a study by a chemistry professor that calculated how best to swallow these things. But the Supreme Court ruled that it didn't meet the scientific standards necessary and couldn't be presented as evidence. Now, Wikipedia then goes on to talk about the chip redesign, but I say maybe they thought there was something to the suit, because it's the very next year that they have this redesign, which is the costliest redesign in Frito-Lay history, where they spent $50 million to redesign Doritos. The president of tortilla chip marketing at that time for Frito-Lay said that a primary reason for the change was, quote, greater competition from restaurant-style tortilla chips that are larger and more strongly seasoned, unquote. And the design change was the result of a 2-year market research study that involved 5,000 chip eaters. Now, here's where I think that it's a little sus, because it was like a year after that lawsuit. And the new design made the chips 20% larger, 15% thinner, and gave each chip rounded corners, making it easier to eat, reducing the scrap from broken corners. Each chip was also given more seasoning, resulting in a stronger flavor. And the redesigned chips were released in 4 flavors beginning in January of 1995, and that's what we still have to this day.
Okay, for real though, like, so what they said is like, all right, fair. We understand that our primary audience doesn't want to chew that much. So
all I'm saying is, if you want a period appropriate snack to the US release of this film, which is the one we're going to be reviewing, Doritos.
Come travel with these 4 adventurous boys as they explore the past in an exciting expedition that takes them 300 million years back through the ages in their journey to the beginning of time. An extraordinary recreation of history, acclaimed by Dr. Edwin H. Colbert of the American Museum of Natural History as absolutely authentic. A thrilling and enlightening adventure story of the development of life on Earth.
Look out! They've seen us! Here they come! Watch out!
Why, that was close!
We didn't have to worry anyhow. It says here in my notes that they only eat fish.
Oh, sure. That's because they never tasted a boy before.
See the Stegosaurus, the Trachodon, the Brontosaurus, the Mammoth. All of them, and many other amazements of the past, come spectacularly alive in this fantastic film, Journey to the Beginning of Time.
There are 4 kids. All of them, except one, have their own special hat, so it'll help you identify them.
Yes.
JoJo's the little one. Doc is probably the main character narrator. He's the one who keeps the notebook and everything. He's the brainy guy. There's Tony and Ben. Ben, even though he has the pith helmet, he gets like almost, I don't think he gets any lines. But they needed 4 guys to row the boat.
Yeah.
Tony does get a little adventure of his own.
And their original names were, I think, Peter, Tonic, Jenda, and Yirka, or something like that.
Yeah. This is a boys' outdoor adventure story. The adventure starts when they get in the boat. They're on the lake or whatever, and they find a cave, which is in this version is marked with the same kind of magical symbol that the wooden Indian shaman in the Natural History Museum had. They're like, oh, I wonder what that's. We should explore. They come out on the other side, and they are in an entirely different place.
Would you say that would be completely out of the realm of possibility? Like you said, it's a boy's adventure story. If if it was relabeled, renamed, and one of the characters was named Tom Swift.
No, actually, no. It could totally be a Tom Swift novel. And when I say boys, you could scale it up because we mentioned like like Doc Savage before. It's it's a very here's these four fellas. They each have their roles, and we're going to tell a simple story of adventure. And it would be Tom Swift and the Cave of Time, or
yeah. Yeah, and if it was called that and I didn't know better, I would say, okay, maybe it's not the best Tom Swift adaptation, but yeah, they adapted an actual Tom Swift story.
Absolutely. And I mean, honestly, I kept expecting one of the characters to say, golly gee. They didn't, as far as I can tell, but, they had that kind of like dialogue, and it was kind of awesome. Full confession, at some point in my life, I was really into kids adventure books. There's that were really popular. Like there's one called like The Swallows in the Amazons and different stuff. It was basically children living, without adults for a while and doing adventures, right?
It's the Hardy Boys thing. Hardy Boys was like the most successful version of that.
Exactly. Yeah, right. It's when we look at it now, children's literature in this vein tends to get pretty apocalyptic. Or like it's like, yeah, you gotta save the world. Then it was like much more small scale. Yeah, no, you just go do your thing. Maybe you have a beef with some other kids or something. Occasionally you'll have like a magical adventure, but it was smaller scale, but it was still a blast. And you could scale it up. Like, obviously Tom Swift, man, he did some stuff, and his best friend Bud was like a Navy SEAL or something. I don't remember. But yeah, this was cool because everybody got their own sort of little role. JoJo is the younger kid, right? He's a young kid with some naivete. I think Tony was the diversity hire. Maybe he might have been, I don't know. It's a little swirly, but like I said, Ben got to have a good hat, but basically, didn't get any lines. But Doc, who's like the tall blonde kid, he has a hat with a little beanie on top, and he sort of is the ringleader. He's definitely taking notes. He's the one who gives all the information about the animals they see. And I thought this is going to go like straight to dinosaurs, right? No, this is a journey through time. They start out, they come out on the other side, and they get to. This was kind of crazy the way I was like, wow, I can't believe they're having these kids do this. They come to a frozen lake, and they make their way through the lake in this rowboat, and it looks actually dangerous. Like, you have no business doing this.
The kids act like old men in a lot of cases, and they also have like zero self-preservation instincts.
Yep.
But tons of survival skills.
Yes.
So I have a feeling that like this is kind of communist propaganda influence here. Remember, this is at the time the country was communist, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like if you see these old films, they often like emphasize self-reliance and you need to have all these skills, and this is what makes a good comrade, and a good citizen. I think there's some of that playing into this.
Oh yeah.
It's never stated overtly, but it seems kind of like, oh, and you need to be fearless and correct. There's like no, like, there's never at any time do they think about like, how are we going to get back home? No, it's just like, we will forge on,
They're like, oh yeah, we can get back anytime. We're fine. I mean, okay. So like, I think that it was, I think that originally, instead of it being some kids that, Natural History Museum, was set like with the pioneers, which I think was probably like the equivalent of scouts or something like that. This is very much like a scouting story. As a matter of fact, it reminded me of a much later thing that appeared in Boy Scouts magazine called Boy's Life, right?
Yeah.
And it was literally the Time Machine series, where Boy Scouts buy a time machine and adventures ensue. Look, I don't think we can discount the importance of the war, okay? we're trying to, a war happened, and no matter what they said of being a war to end all wars, nobody necessarily believed that. And you're trying to make sure your kids are ready to go for whatever happens next.
Yeah, it's Cold War. It's the height of the Cold War. We already talked about the Korean War and the Vietnam War.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very, it's all about promoting that self-reliance. And these kids are like, they're on it. They camp. They have clothes in their backpacks. They have changes of clothes.
At one point, so I know we were at the point where they crossed the ice, but at one point they build a camp and they build a fire, and it's not like when we go camping, even with today's conveniences, they build the spit thing that hangs over that has the pot that hangs from the chain. At one point, one of the kids lands what looks like about a 15-pound fish.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, even though there's a couple times when one of them goes off and leaves the other ones, right? It never ends badly. Like one time Tony goes off, he wants to take pictures, he ends up falling in a hole, which is like an animal trap. There's the signs of a caveman somewhere, but we never see him. They find his tools and stuff. But when Tony comes back, they think he's a caveman because he's covered from head to toe in mud. But immediately after that, they have a camp and they cleaned his clothes. I'm like, it's like, so there has that detail. They talk about, that when they don't dwell on the food and everything, but you see them boiling water at almost every stop. They make camp. There's one time when what's his name? The doc is awake, making notes. He's with a lantern, and they're in the time period where there's not dinosaurs, but crocodiles. And so they're coming at him, and they're like in the swamp, and they're on the boat. And he just swings the lantern and wards them off. So they get out. He's like, and Jojo wakes up. What happened? He's like, nothing. I was just cleaning the lantern. Go back to sleep. And then he marvels at fire. It is what is the thing that separates from the beast, or something kind of like that. Very much that kind of thing. And sometime near there, because they're all along the river, right? They're camping. I think Jojo was going to go into the water, clean up, and they're waking up in the morning, and they have a fire. And Jojo goes out in the water, and there's this leopard hanging out over top of him.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jojo, does he freak out? No. He takes off and swimming, and so he is freaking out. But the other ones grab up flaming logs and start throwing it at the leopard. The leopard it's, by the way, to back up for a second, the special effects, not so great. Really not. But it kind of doesn't even matter. You know how we talked about how the dinosaurs are the thing? The dinosaurs, the animals and stuff, that's not the thing for this. For me, the thing was these kids out here doing kids. That's what would have vied with me. If I had been around then, I probably would have watched it and been looking forward to the next morning to watch it again, because they're on an adventure and there's no parents in sight and there's no going back. They're just doing their thing. Probably the best special effects is when Jojo comes up against, I think it's supposed to be a dinosaur. It looks like a frogman almost, and has it out with them over the Lost Diary. So lots of really good boy versus nature, nothing super unrealistic or anything like that. Even with the leopard, after they do that and they just ditch the camp and take off with the boat, they're like, we're out of here, man. This is the only time one of them cries, and the rest of them are all like, oh, at least we didn't lose the food.
Well, he's the littlest kid, right?
Yeah, because they send him back because they have witnessed this fight between dinosaurs, and they were measuring a stegosaurus, and they were taking pictures because they're scientists, right? They send him back to the boat for something, and he starts calling out, fellas, whatever. That's the kind of dialogue it is. And they come running, and the boat is smashed. They figure out it was some behemoth monster smashed it. And they're just like, oh, at least the food's not destroyed. Oh, we still have an axe. We can build a raft. There's no talk of we're going back now.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have no thoughts about how they're going to go back. that never comes. I will say that JoJo like wanders off way too much in this.
That he does.
It's not like you can find your way. It's like a world, right? It's the
Yeah.
entire world is like this. So it's like you could get lost for your entire lifetime in one of these eras. So I thought that was a little bit not too bright.
But they always show it turning out okay. And I think you're in a way, again, you're talking about the propaganda. It's like, yeah, he's an intrepid young kid. He's not afraid of nothing, man.
Yeah. Well, they eventually do get back to the dinosaur era. And once again, I think there was like an Allosaurus versus Stegosaurus fight, right?
Yeah, definitely. I thought that was really cool. And they actually show the kids on the Stegosaurus
Climbing on it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a tiny little model. They had a full size Stegosaurus statue or something that they used.
Mind you, JoJo is always like, man, he's always trying to take a trophy, man. He wants to take something home with him.
Yeah. It keeps going further and further back in time, even past the dinosaurs. They go back to like, the Carboniferous type. JoJo again, I think, chases the dragonfly for a long way.
Yeah.
They take it all the way back to the beginning of time. This movie, it's all about science. There's like science lessons in this. It's like all about the paleontology, and everything was, I guess, cutting edge for its time in terms of the science.
Oh, yeah.
And then it gets to the end and it's the last minute where it's all like, and God created this and all of that. And that, I will point out, is the American change to this, right? Because of course, I guess you couldn't have godless communism. They had to, once again, I'm overemphasizing the influence here of communism versus capitalism or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's my interpretation of the belief here. It's like, oh, we got to throw in some God stuff in this.
Yeah, they're like the edge of the ocean, and they're looking across at the primeval Earth, where it's with the volcanoes and blah blah blah. And I'm like, wow, this is really, that stuff was controversial, As a matter of fact, I think maybe 30 years before this thing came out, I think that's when they had the Scopes monkey trial, which I didn't realize this, but we didn't have laws against teaching evolution. It wasn't like, oh, you're teaching evolution for the first time. No, they made laws against it. That's why it became a problem. They're like, it was very much a conservative backlash at that time.
Yeah.
I love these resourceful kids, man.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. This is a spoiler alert.
Oh, by the way, how did we end it? Because they're staring there at the beach. I'm like, they are screwed. There's no way they can get back.
Well, spoiler here. So they wake up and they're in the museum. Was it all just a dream? They don't know.
What?
But then they have the diary, or they have the journal. So it uses that old trope, which wasn't probably an old trope at the time, but
I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, Shakespeare wrote The Parent Trap. I mean, basically. So yeah, we're like, what a cheesy idea, this Parent Trap. Is like, nah, man, I gotta tell you something. Shakespeare wrote that. I mean, maybe it's different when he did it, but these things go back and back and back. It's crazy.
The Czech version of this was 10 minutes longer and had a different beginning and ending. Like their whole motivation for going back was different. They wanted to get a trilobite, which I have no idea if they ever did because we don't have that version.
How can I put this? I like it very much in that sense. I'm like, I want to see this. I want to see this. I want to see. Okay, so the special effects, kind of crappy, whatever. Doesn't matter. The kids sing, awesome, and the fact that they are like what you said, like old men, and they're just out there doing their thing. It's like, no, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Whatever depiction you have of anybody at any age is going to be somewhat artificial. We don't necessarily want to have a realistic thing. This is aspirational. It's the idea that, yeah, I'm prepared to go out in the wilderness, have my own adventures. It's awesome. I think it would be a blast to have the equivalent now because we have a lot of angsty stuff. There's no angst in this movie. There's none. Hell, Harry Potter was angsty. This ain't angsty, man. There's none. It's just them going out and frankly being little manly men and doing manly men stuff. And I don't mean it has to be about men because it could be little girls doing it.
It's old school. It's original series Star Trek, to boldly go where no man's gone before,
You got it, man.
with no like.
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it. I mean, and the thing is, it's not like they were toxic or anything. They looked after each other, and they came to
Well,
agreements.
they did throw like torches at like the local fauna, and
they threw the torches to get away and escape. They were not out there like looking for a fight. They were.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so you give it a thumbs up.
I give it a thumbs up. I can't tell you how much I appreciate both of these movies. The last two we did, it's going back to the source. It's like it's like, oh wow, that's old, man. That really gives it, and then you can go all the way back there, and then you can say, now what do I want to do with this?
Unfortunately, I give it a thumbs down.
Oh.
I would have loved this, I think, as a kid. I know that the thing was hugely influential on Terry Gilliam and Tim Burton and stuff, but I found it to be a bit sleep-inducing. It may just because it's the American version, and the American version was recut up in like 6-minute serial installment, and I might have enjoyed it better that way, where it's like, okay, in this episode, they like build a fire and escape this giant like prehistoric bird, and in this episode they do this, and because it does feel very episodic the way that it is, and I think I might have liked it better that way. I can say that I probably would have really liked it as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can give it the kind of thumbs up I would for a lot of other movies. Like this movie being 1955 is like a quarter century newer than the last one we watched, The Lost World. But The Lost World is miles better.
Okay, that's fair. That is absolutely fair. And I think I am looking at this. I'm looking at this and like the way like a junk picker looks is like, man, this thing's got good bones. Yeah, no, we could fix this up.
You don't have to apologize, because one of the things we do like to do on the show is like judge it in terms of its time. We can't judge it next to Jurassic Park, but I can judge it against things that came before it, and so I will say that. But it's certainly not terrible. Like we have watched way worse films and will again on this podcast. So, but if you want to find it, it's pretty much everywhere. I don't know if it's in the public domain, but it probably is. A lot of things that were films that were produced under communist regimes were by definition public domain. They were the people's films, right? They were made, they were maybe technically property of the state, but the state doesn't exist anymore. I am not a lawyer. That is not legal advice. But my guess is you could probably find it in a lot of places out there, like perhaps maybe YouTube. And it may be worth a watch if you like that kind of stuff, especially if you like, you mentioned Harry Potter. And I think that an appeal of Harry Potter to a lot of people was the resourcefulness of the kids. Mm-hmm. Those kids were nowhere near as resourceful as these kids in this movie.
Right. At first I was like, this reminds me of a film strip that we would watch when we were in school. It probably had to do with the clunky dialogue and stuff. But yeah, it really panned out for me. It was the actual real kids doing the real kids stuff that was like, this is cool. So
yeah. Okay. Well, with that said, I'm going to say, if you like the show, please tell 2 people about it. Like and subscribe. Our goal is to reach more people. We currently don't charge for this. We don't even put advertising on this, and we don't advertise it elsewhere. So we rely on word of mouth. If you want to talk to us, you can do so through our Facebook group, which is a private Facebook group, not by our intention, but by mistake it was marked as that, and now Facebook won't let us change it. So you have to ask to join, but ask to join and we'll approve you. Or if you want to send us a letter by email, you can do that. We're GC8 podcast, letter G, letter C, number 8 podcast @gmail.com. Until next time, this is Eric.
This is Will.
Signing off.
My mom wouldn't let me keep 20 sticks in the basement. And now I have probably 40 sticks in the basement,